Ah, man. Another day, another Novak Djokovic major. I have been doing this channel for 3 full seasons now, and for 2 of those, Djokovic has won 3 slams, gone to 4 finals, been painstakingly close to the calendar Grand Slam. So, forgive me if I'm running out of superlatives at this point. But it is a 4th US Open title for Novak Djokovic. I am aware this video is quite late at this point. The cause for which I don't really have a good reason, just kind of got in a funk where I was like, yeah, I'll do it the next day. But obviously the 24th major title and 4th in New York, first in 5 years, is definitely something worthy of talking about without a doubt. In a way, it kind of felt like Novak was due again in New York, having not won it since 2018, but there being, some very clear circumstances outlined for each of those years. 2019 injured, 2020 obviously the freak incident with the default, 2021 added pressure of a historic calendar year Grand Slam after having 3 legs down through Wimbledon. In addition to also being a little bit fatigued, that being an Olympic year as well. And then, of course, last year not being able to participate. But as far as Novak is concerned, I think most of us after Wimbledon were pretty much in the same spot where we didn't expect Novak to really be going anywhere. In fact, taking a loss like that, one that he takes so rarely where he's out-edged in a close match and, obviously an emerging generational younger rival. We all had the hunch that, that would only be added fuel to the fire, maybe ignite some sense of purpose in trying to hold off his younger rival as long as he could, and probably more importantly, make the most of these last couple of years of his career, even though it looks like this could keep going for a handful of years to come. And obviously that added sense of drive, motivation was apparent from the very moment he stepped foot in the States, played his first match in Cincinnati, pretty much ran through everybody there on his way to the finals, and then, as I noted, dug in more in a best-of-3 match than I have seen from him in this phase of his career in his 30s. And going into the US Open with all that momentum and then getting the better of the 2 halves, I would say, draw-wise, it had all the makings of, at least a finals appearance for Djokovic's return to the States this year. And obviously his tremendous form from Cincinnati carried over into the US Open, saved that match against Laslo Djere, didn't drop a set the entire tournament. Truth be told, I did feel if he didn't play Alcaraz in the final, I would have a very, very hard time seeing anybody but Novak Djokovic raising this trophy. That being said, I certainly thought that we would be getting that final rematch of Cincinnati and Wimbledon. But obviously Daniil Medvedev reminded us of who he was again, showed his pedigree on that court, and just how high a level he can scale at his best in those conditions. And given how well Daniil Medvedev had played from, his 4th round, I would say, through to the final, I definitely thought that we would get a real battle of a final. I was leaning Djokovic in a tight 4 pre-match, but it was always going to be hard for Daniil Medvedev to reproduce arguably the best performance of his career in the semifinals and back-to-back matches against the 2 best players in the world. But when we get to the final, it's all praise for Djokovic. Even Daniil Medvedev, not quite at his best, this match certainly had room for slip-ups from an aging player that could have made this one the attritional war over the course of 4 or 5 sets rather than just the one in the second, given all the chances that Medvedev had in the second. And in describing the performance overall from Novak in the final, he was very good. You can't not sing his praises there. Same story we've been singing all year, with just how impressive it has been, with how tactically and technically flexible Djokovic has become. talking about 2023 Djokovic, it's become, a bit of a broken record, but the guy just has so many different ways to beat you. In Australia and Paris, of course, it stuck out that he was hitting his forehand bigger, that in conjunction with the improved net play, improved serve. And then here in North America, I think the Cincinnati final, particularly the second set, as well as the entirety of this final, probably the two best volleying matches of Djokovic's career. Ridiculously efficient with no shortage of high degree of difficulty volleys. Obviously, the final, that was the stat that stuck out, the 37 of 44 at net. And of course, so many of those in the second set coming when the match kind of looked like it might be in the balance of it. It looked like there was a path back for Medvedev all the way to, drain Djokovic of his legs a bit, as Novak was looking quite gassed throughout much of that second set. But again, it comes back to just how versatile a player he's become. 2023 Djokovic has all the avenues to shorten points, and he knew exactly the buttons to press. Of course, since that 2021 Paris final, it seems Djokovic has very much gotten his blueprint against Medvedev down pat. It's a matchup that he's had some difficulty with as far back as 2019, even before Daniil hit, I guess, what you could consider his prime in the summer of 2019. But the way that he's been able to work out that matchup, I think, is one of the most blatant displays of just how complete a player he is at this point. Even in 2021, he wasn't the first to exploit, the Medvedev return position, as well as him not being the best at passing shots. But obviously, it takes such a skilled player to be able to so effectively employ that game plan. And obviously, you have to be one of the best volleyers in the world to pull it off. And Novak Djokovic undoubtedly has made himself a volleyer of that distinction at this point. And we've seen it so many times where it feels like Djokovic maybe stole a set. His opponent had more chances, felt like he was on the ropes, and he somehow found the reserves to get over the finish line. And I felt like I saw a lot of people kind of allude to the fact that that second set was that type of deal for Novak, and really that's where the match was decided. If Medvedev had a path back, he was going to need to win that second set, probably in either that 3-4 game or, I believe, the 5-6 game when he had the one set point. Just because, at both those points, the set had been so physical, so long, that essentially making it a win 2 out of the next 3 sets type of deal at a set all. Maybe that gives Medvedev a bit of the edge, but, personally, I would have still backed Djokovic. He's more than earned that benefit of the doubt. But, the point being, I don't think Djokovic was the one who stole that set. I think Djokovic earned that set. I think you could argue that Novak was the one who had the more chances in the first half of the set, probably should have broken early in the second. Second half of the second set, obviously, was when Daniil played his best tennis of the match, but he still never was the one being proactive. It looked like, he just wanted to backboard to eternity regardless. He was just executing it at a higher level the second half of that set. And on the contrary, it was Novak that was making everything happen. Obviously came up with a couple of tremendous volleys under pressure, most notably the one to save the break point at 3-4, and of course continually executing the serve out wide, serve volley to perfection. Even though this tournament, I don't think Novak served anywhere near his best throughout, in this final he still did a fantastic job of placing his slice out wide in the deuce. Most of the time set him up for a pretty routine volley into the open court. And then also in the breaker, they traded early mini breaks, but after that, Daniil did a great job of holding on to his serve, putting himself in position at 5-4 to, if Novak would have surrendered any one of his points, he would have been facing a set point, maybe 2. And then at 5-all, probably the point I'd most remember from this final, I guess aside from the point that got Medvedev to 5-4, that was probably the point of the match. Absolutely unreal stuff. Lung-busting rally ending with a Medvedev redrop. But at 5-all, Djokovic-Medvedev caught in a backhand-to-backhand rally, and it was trademark Novak fearlessness under pressure. Every successive backhand at the end of this point, Novak seemed to be hitting harder and harder, and eventually Medvedev just beaten for pace. It was always going to be tough to beat Bregovic and how automatic he's been in them this year, especially in the majors. And the way that Novak played it, it certainly seemed like he grasped the importance of winning that tiebreak. Winning it, match essentially over. Losing it, you're essentially going to have to win another best-of-3 match after such a physical first 2 sets. But, another signature of this, Djokovic 3.0 per se, is that nobody seems to grasp those type of situations the way that Novak does. It really is like clockwork, the way that he can manipulate his play accordingly to these ebbs and flows within a match, and nearly almost put his best foot forward and press all the right buttons when the chips are down in the most high leverage of those moments. This was a super similar match to the 2018 final, identical score, and, the flow of the match was similar as well. And I remember thinking, watching that 2018 US Open final between Djokovic and Del Potro, where, Del Po was down a set and a break in that one, and got it back on serve in the second, and I kind of felt like, this is similar progression to Del Po's first major win, the famous US Open 2009, where also there, set in a breakdown, nervous for much of that passage of play, but still somehow found his way back in on even footing. But unlike in the 2009 match, it was only temporary there. Djokovic shut down his comeback bid in the tiebreak there as well. And, I think that goes to show. I said the last video I made after the Cincinnati final that he's probably the guy that you least want to give a lifeline to. You give him an inch, he'll take it a mile. He's also probably the last guy that's going to give you a lifeline. And so, again, winning that second set tiebreak just about shut off any path back for Medvedev. Not really much to talk about with that third set. Probably a bit of relief, and as a result, wind in Djokovic's sails to get that 2-set cushion, re-energized him a bit, and even though they exchanged breaks in the early stages of the first set, the mountain was pretty much insurmountable for Medvedev. Djokovic kind of cruised to the finish line, caps off another historic year, 4th 3-slam season of his career, and probably for him feels extra sweet to sweep the action that he participated in the States this year in Cincy and the US Open. In a historical context, I think this one is also really nice in that it puts Djokovic up there with the best of the best as far as US Open champions, with 4 US Open titles, especially given how uncharacteristically inopportune he's been converting those finals into titles at this event. And it goes without saying, continuing to widen the gap as far as the slam race and, his GOAT status goes at this point. Not a lot of suspense along the way to his wins this year, but, in the grand scheme of things, as far as significance goes, probably one of the sweetest years of his career. Of course, making all this history in front of his family, his children old enough, as well as being front and center to witness it all. And of course, continuing to defy what is possible at this age. As long as he continues playing at this level, he's essentially creating a new record every time he steps out on the court. And yeah, it's another year for Novak and his Nole fam to bask in all he's achieved this year. And as always, there very well might be more to come for this year when he comes back in Bercy in the Tour Finals. But anyhow, another tremendous slam season. All you can really do is tip your cap and say bravo. But before I get out of here, obviously apologies for how late this video is. I probably should have plugged my podcast before, but for the last couple months, me and a couple of my hometown fellow tennis fan friends from Cincinnati have been doing a podcast called The Racket Rundown. If you're looking for more consistent, certainly, and I guess raw and reactionary content, you can get it there. It's on Spotify. I'm still working on getting it up on other platforms. We had actually done a US Open draw preview and predictions. I was out of town at the beginning of the tournament. I was intending on chopping that up and throwing it on here, but I didn't really get something I was satisfied with. But anyways, that's a thing. If that's something that interests you, any listens are appreciated. I will link it in the description below. Otherwise, thank you all again so much for watching, and of course, I will see y'all in the next one.